Are you ready to hear an inspirational hero tale about one of our four-legged friends? My name is Kim, and this is Harry Hero Tales. Welcome to episode 4 of Harry Hero Tales, Animals to the Rescue. I'm your host, Kim Hagel. In this episode, I'll be sharing our very first entirely international story, and it's about a hero named Hachiko. While our first episodes shared amazing stories about animals in military combat or first responder situations, this one is completely unique, inspiring, and in an extraordinary way, it's also a story about a man and his dog. Let me warn you, though, now, this one, while being the definition of inspiration, it is also a tearjerker. So prepare yourself with some tissues, and if you're listening in your car, please drive carefully. Now, to sum up this story in one word is pretty easy: devotion. Hachiko was born November 10th, 1923. Fun fact, Hachiko shares his birthday with the United States Marine Corps. Hachiko is from a town in Odate, which is within the Akita prefecture. A Japanese prefecture is the subnational administration or regional administration within the Japanese government. Hachiko was also an Akita dog. The Akita breed as we know it dates back to the 16th century. It came to us from a mountainous region in Japan in the Akita prefecture. The original ancestor of this breed was known as the Akita Matagi, which means Akita hunter or hunting dog. And it had been a fighting dog and hunting dog for the samurai of that time. Apparently, the Akita could hunt, attack, and even take down a bear. Now, the Akita at the time of our story was actually a breed in decline. When it was revered in the 17th or 18th century, I found reports that the Akita could not be owned by the masses. What this means is, at that time in history, it was actually illegal for anyone outside of the imperial family or high-ranking nobles to own an Akita. If this is true, this restriction likely limited the number of pure Akitas within Japan for many years. I found articles and comments that the number of pure Akitas in the 1920s was estimated to be less than 50. Some reports stating it may have actually been less than 30. There was also some controversy around what constituted a pure Akita. Some lines had been bred with German Shepherds and other lines with Japanese dog breeds. So how the Akita was counted and defined also likely limited tracking how many existed in the early 20th century. Either way, whichever line Hachiko is from was definitely not vast in numbers at the time our hero was born. Hachiko's story cannot be told without sharing a bit about the object of his devotion, Professor Hidesaburo Ueno. Professor Ueno was born on January 19, 1872. He graduated in 1895 from the Tokyo Imperial University's Agricultural Department. He then entered their graduate program, which he completed in 1900 with a degree in agricultural engineering. By 1902, he had joined the facility to become a professor of agricultural science. His expertise, or the focus of his work aside from teaching, was in reclaiming or restoring land as well as in drainage engineering. Some of his work helped restore areas of Japan after earthquakes or other destructive circumstances. Now, based on their actions and support of his legacy after his death, Professor Ueno's students clearly respected and admired him. He must have been an amazing teacher. And based on Hachiko's devotion, he also must have been a very kind and loving human being. From the research I've done, I never found where the professor had ever married or had any children. If this is true, in my opinion, he gave his whole heart to his work, to his students, and to Hachiko. So how did our hero and the professor's story begin? Well, like many of you listening, the professor at about age 50 got a dog. For a long time, the professor longed for an Akita, and one of his students had recommended that he get a puppy that he had seen. Finding the puppy in the town of Odate, Ueno brought him home to the Shibuya area of Tokyo. Apparently, the train ride to Tokyo was nearly 20 hours and was very hard on the puppy, who was ill when he finally arrived. Some stories that I found that came out later stated the trip very nearly killed him, and it took a few months for him to recover under the loving care of Professor Ueno. But he more than recovered. Hachiko ultimately thrived with his beloved master. During these early months after his recovery, and given that Ueno was a teacher, I'm sure he spent a great deal of time with Hachiko, talking, training, and teaching him. His name at the time was actually Hachi, which means 8 in Japanese. Apparently, 8 is a very lucky number, so the professor clearly saw Hachi as bringing him good luck. Later, as Hachi got older and was behaving well under the teachings of his master, he began a very special ritual. The professor, in order to commute to his job at the university, had to take a train each morning from the Shibuya station in Tokyo. I've been to Japan, and I took a bullet train from Tokyo to Nagoya. I'm not sure, but I may have actually been in the Shibuya train station. I can tell you what I recall was a huge complex filled with a lot of people when I was there. And apparently at the time the professor used it, it was also a hub of activity. But even with the distractions of the hustle and bustle of the city and the train station, Hachi was trustworthy enough to make the trip with the professor each morning to see him off. Which means he was on his own to find his way back home after the professor boarded his train. At the end of the workday, the ritual repeated in reverse, with Hachi arriving at the Shibuya train station to greet his master for the return walk home. As you can imagine, the professor, along with the trains, were very punctual and reliable. Same routine every day, which likely made Hachi a very frequent sight at the station by vendors, passengers, and friends of the professor. Now, anyone who has spent any time training a dog to do anything knows the importance of repetition. But Hachi is special, in my opinion, given that he was free to do as he pleased all day. But he loyally returned to accompany his master home after he arrived on the train. How the professor taught him to do this and learn what time he would return each day is not 100% clear to me. What I suspect is Hachi eventually was able to discern what time his master made his way to their home. Hachi probably got a little impatient for him to arrive, and given that he clearly had the ability to move freely during the day, I believe Hachi started going to the train station on his own to find the professor before the train arrived. However it came about, not only walking him to the station each morning, but Hachi's waiting to greet the professor when he came back on the train became part of his daily ritual as well. The truly remarkable part of this story begins with heartbreak, unfortunately. On May 21st, 1925, when Hachi was only a year and a half old, the professor boarded his train to the university for the very last time. Professor Bueno suffered a cerebral hemorrhage while giving a lecture that day and died as a result. Now, I don't know about you, but I can picture poor Hachi on that day arriving at the train station as he always did to wait for his beloved master to return. But the professor never did. Hachi, however, never gave up seeing the professor again. He returned to the train station every day for his master, and every day he would have to leave alone. As I said in the beginning, this is a true story of devotion. So, how long did Hachi continue to seek out his owner and go to the Shibuya train station to wait for him to return? Hachi waited and waited for nearly 10 years. Hachi's focus and loyalty never wavered. Hachi's hope never wavered. And Hachi's heart never wavered. Hachi continued every day for nearly 10 years to walk to the Shibuya station seeking his master and waiting for the train to bring him back. Hachi was apparently taken to various homes to live after the professor's death. Some were pretty far from where he had lived before and from the train station. But Hachi was determined and continued to run away and seek his owner. He did eventually settle down to live at the home of the professor's former gardener, Kabayashi. And his home was very close to the station, making Hachi's daily trips much easier. I was able to find some sad reports that Hachi may have actually been mistreated or even beaten by pedestrians or passers-by at the train station when they encountered him. Now, if this is true, this quickly ended, however, when an article was written in newspapers about the remarkable Akita, who had returned for 7 years at that point, looking for his master. In 1932, Hirokichi Saito, one of the professor's students who had researched and learned a great deal about the Akita dog breed, had an article he wrote published in the Asahi Shimbun, a daily newspaper which today is one of Japan's top 5 national newspapers. The article chronicled the amazing story of Hachi's devotion to his master, Professor Bueno, and the daily ritual of returning to greet him at the Shibuya train station, and the remarkable fact that he had been doing it since the day his master should have returned in 1925. As a result of the article, Hachi became a beloved visitor at the Shibuya station and was celebrated nationally throughout Japan. He became a symbol of devotion and loyalty for families, children, and the people of Japan. Hachi was so revered that in 1934, the sculptor Teru Ando's bronze statue of Hachi was placed at the Shibuya station. Hachi, unlike many heroes throughout history who have long passed before they were commemorated with anything like a statue, actually attended the unveiling that April. Hachi's name was also modified to add the suffix ko at the end. Previously only known as Hachi, he was now known as Hachiko. Research I've done shows this suffix is typically added to the end of a name in Japan as a sign of innocence of childhood, or it means adorable child. It was definitely a sign of affection by the Japanese people for this amazing Akita dog. The first statue placed at the Shibuya station in 1934 was actually melted down during World War II for the war effort. The artist's son created another just like his father's, and in 1948, it was placed at the Shibuya station, where it still stands today, and is next to what is become known as the Hachiko exit. This statue has become a popular gathering spot, and many like to visit to pay their respects to this truly amazing dog. Another statue is on the campus of the University of Tokyo. Unveiled in March 2015 by the Faculty of Agriculture, this bronze statue depicts the return of Professor Bueno to his beloved Hachi, with the Akita excitedly raising his front paws to the chest and hands of his master. The children of Japan are to this day taught the story of Hachiko as a true example of loyalty, faithfulness, hope, and devotion. Such a great story couldn't be overlooked by writers of books nor movie makers. There are several of each. The movie I finally saw, after putting off watching it because I knew what a tearjerker it would turn out to be, was definitely done in Hollywood style. I will say, at its core, it is faithful to the remarkable story of a devoted Akita to his professor. But there are some distinct differences to Americanize it. Released in 2009, the movie is called Hachi, A Dog's Tale. It stars Richard Gere as Professor Wilson. It shares the true nature of the relationship between the professor and Hachi, as well as the devoted return day after day for many years after his master had died. Filmed in Rhode Island, the train station featured in the movie is in Woonsocket. In 2012, a bronze statue like the one at the Shibuya train station in Tokyo was unveiled to show love and respect for the beloved Hachiko. It still stands there today in Woonsocket. All of the statues, books, and movies share the story of Hachiko's devotion and hope for his owner's return that was never meant to be. In 1935, at the age of 11, and after more than 9 years and 9 months of his vigil and ritual of returning every day to the Shibuya train station for Professor Bueno, Hachiko died. Many listeners may be like me, those who have lost a beloved animal and imagine the Rainbow Bridge, where they will go to walk or run or play while they wait patiently for our arrival. With the story of Hachiko, I like to think of him after so many years of longing, finally traveling the Rainbow Bridge to board a train and to find his beloved master who instead is waiting there for him. Hachi has no more heartbreak and no more walks home alone. Hachiko is forever with his professor. While that only touches the surface of this amazing hairy hero, we have to leave it there for this episode. If you know of a great hairy hero tale and would like to hear it on this podcast, email us at hairyherotales@gmail.com. For more information on this program, visit our website, www.hairyherotales.com. That's TAILS.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcast. This is a Southpaw Productions podcast, edited, produced, and hosted by me, Kim Hagel. Opening and closing music provided by Mary Selvage. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Selvage613 for her live show schedule, and check out her complete catalog of music available on Spotify, Apple Music, and more. And remember, there are hairy four-legged heroes all around us. Who knows, you might even adopt one. I've adopted many little heroes from some amazing animal rescue organizations, and I've featured 2 on my website, the All-American Dachshund Rescue and the French Bulldog Rescue Network. If you're looking to rescue your next hero or would like to help with transport or financial support, I highly recommend both of these organizations. Neither are affiliated with this program in any way, but both have my sincere gratitude and support. Thank you to all the heroes of the world, and a special shout out for Harry Heroes Everywhere.